Hello, hi, and welcome to Political Quickie, your political show that subjectively discusses current affairs in South Africa and all around the world. My name is Mapasika Mura. Now, I know that there are new subscribers to the channel, so now, I don't promise that you'll always agree with me, but I do promise that I'll always have a fresh perspective on everything. Yes! So let's get straight into the show. This is actually one of those episodes where I could not fit all the information into one episode. So I actually advise you to read beyond and research beyond this episode. So Africa and China have come a long way in terms of their trade relations. The West used to be the number one trader of Africa, but now that top spot has been assumed by China. In fact, China has been very supportive and helpful in Africa fighting imperialism. You know, from providing arms, military training, to even providing money. So China sees itself as some sort of big brother or, even some savior or deliverer of some sort, to Africa. And if you don't believe me, then you need to at least go watch the trailer of a Chinese movie titled Wolf Warrior 2. Okay, so in this movie, the soldier slash protagonist steps on African soil to come and save poverty-stricken and disease-infested black Africans from Western oppression. Yeah, so this movie made 874 million US dollars at the box office, right? So if there's anything that Western culture has taught us is that if you want to gain control of a country or a continent, you seek ye first economic power and then you will gain political and social power. And I think China has taken, a few pages out of that rule book. Let's start with the most important, which is the economy. Now, you know that once you have control of the economy, you automatically have control of the politicians. Let's look at a few examples though, okay? In the case of Angola, China has borrowed Angola 900 billion rands within a period of 35 years. And to date, Angola owes China 375 billion. Angola has used that money to develop infrastructure in that country. And you're probably sitting there thinking, well, actually, this is way better than when Rex Tillerson actually paid the president of Equatorial Guinea money for their oil instead of paying the actual country. You're right to some extent. But here's the thing. Now Angola is forced to export most of their oil to China because they use that as collateral for the loans. I mean, how insane. We look at another example in the case of Zimbabwe. When Mugabe decided, well, I'm going to go and borrow money from China. But China had terms and conditions for the loan, which was to be exempt from labor laws in Zimbabwe and to also have first rights to mineral exploration. Yeah. And then, right, we've got China's number one trade partner in Africa, which is South Africa. South Africa just got a very nice tender loan, right, from China to Eskom worth 33 billion rands, right? And according to President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, if South Africa defaults on that loan, China will not take over Eskom. Even though we know very well that China is about to take control of Zambia's international airport for defaulting on a loan. Between the period of 2000 and 2016, Africa has borrowed 1.8 trillion rands from China. 1.8 trillion. Yeah. So we can safely say that African leaders are in the process of selling Africa to China. Let's kindly move on to the politics, okay? Now, if you've seen Chairman Xi Jinping in Africa, forget Davido and Nasty C. You know that Chairman Xi Jinping is the coolest kid in Africa, okay? Right? If you've seen President Paul Kagame with Xi Jinping, President Paul Kagame literally looks like a teacher's pet. It's not even like it's a real thing. It's a real thing. Okay, now South Africa even denied the Dalai Lama entrance into South Africa for Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu's birthday, all because China and the Dalai Lama not the same WhatsApp group. So South Africa has to obey China when it comes to certain things. Eswatini seems to be the only country in Africa that's not having these very dodge trade relations with China. When all African leaders ran, literally marathoned to China to go get a piece of that $60 billion worth of investment loans, actually, right, from China, Eswatini kindly stayed behind. Like, we're not having any of that. Although they have their own reasons, because Eswatini does trade with the likes of Taiwan, they say that they will not exert any pressure on Eswatini. However, the day will come sooner or later. That sounds like a choice. It sounds like Eswatini will have a choice at the end of the day to not have trade relations with China. It does not sound like China will eventually force Eswatini to trade with it. China has established its first international military naval base in Djibouti. It might sound okay because France and the US have their military base in Djibouti, but when you do look closer, right? Okay, Djibouti owes China money equivalent to 80% of its GDP. Money it can never pay back, basically. So Djibouti probably did not have a choice whether or not China put its, military base in that country. Hey! $0 choice. Just like that. Let's move on to the social influence that China seems to have in Africa, okay? We know that Malawi is now offering Mandarin lessons. And you might be like, well, I can, take Mandarin as a subject in South Africa. Okay. But here's the thing. We take control of your economy. We take control of your politics. And then you start speaking our languages. And then you start practicing our culture. And then you belong to us. Okay? Yes. Okay. It's amazing that in Africa we are the ones learning Mandarin, not Chinese people coming to Africa and learning our languages. Just saying. And also, China has bought a 20% stake in one of South Africa's biggest newspaper chains. Because, if you control the media narrative, then you control what the people think about, right? Hey, and you can just gag those journalists if you want. Hey, in the process, I cannot deal. So, there's one thing that I've noticed. China is very afraid of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Like, they literally shaking in their boots because they don't know what to expect, if this will mean that Africa will practice more protectionism. So maybe that's the answer to, African leaders not selling Africa to China and Africa not being recolonized by a different colonizer. Because China seems to have this, rule that, you must trade freely, right? And, that the deal is equally beneficial. Africa gains infrastructure and China gains money and control over Africa. So it's unbelievable that African leaders are consciously doing this, selling Africa to the highest bidder. It's actually unbelievable. And you've got the West sitting on the sidelines saying, oh my gosh, watch out for China. And of course, they're only warning us for their benefit because they would rather be the one in control. Like how like how France is still controlling West Africa in this day and age. They would rather be the ones that are controlling Africa. So clearly African leaders are not gonna sell us, right? They're gonna continue to do this. So it's actually up to us to ensure that we are not sold to China at the end of the day. And I think it starts with the African Continental Free Trade Area to make sure that our businesses trade with one another. right? So that there's not so much of trade relations with Africa and China. Yeah. I am 100% freaked out. I am not gonna lie. I'm 100% freaked out. But anyways, I love you guys. Use your talents to serve humanity. And I will see you on Wednesday. Goodbye.